Thank you to everyone for joining our webinar today. My name is Mark Miles. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Guild Quality. And I'm delighted to introduce our topic today, which is how founders successfully grow their business while preserving core values and company culture. We're very fortunate today to have Victoria Downing, President of Remodelers Advantage, who will be our presenter and also our moderator. Victoria has been a friend and a valued partner of Guild Quality's for many, many years, and honestly can't think of anyone who's better equipped to lead the discussion today than Victoria. We also are joined by three of the top remodelers in the country: Jonas Karnmark, owner of Karnmark Design Build; Bob Fleming, President of Classic Remodeling; and Todd Jackson, owner of Jackson Design and Remodeling. I'll introduce our panel here in a moment, and you'll be hearing from them later on in the program. First, just a word about why we launched the Owners Series. This is the second webinar in our series. We had planned to do these quarterly, but frankly the reception from the first webinar, which we did back in June, was so positive that we think we're going to do them more frequently. The objective of these calls is really to engage our great members in discussions that go well beyond client satisfaction. And in order to do that, we're going to rely on our great partners like Victoria and also our great Guild Quality members, such as the panel, to help come and share their experiences. Hopefully during the conversation today, you're going to come away with some really specific ideas that you can take back and implement in your business. You're going to hear stories and examples from our panel of things that have worked and that haven't worked in their business. And then as a follow-up to the webinar, we'll also be packaging all of this up into a white paper that we'll distribute to you within the week. So we hope this is valuable, and it's certainly something that we plan to continue to do in the future. With that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Victoria Downing, President of Remodelers Advantage. Honestly, Victoria has a depth of experience working with business owners, down in the trenches, working on growth, and helping founders navigate the challenges as well as the joys that come with that journey. She's been doing this since 1990. Her roundtables, peer groups, are very, very successful. Many of our members participate in them, and it's a great opportunity for business owners and founders to come together, share information and fellowship, as well as to hold one another accountable as they grow. Victoria is going to give a short presentation today. We'll then turn to our panel discussion. We have some prepared questions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A from the audience. As you listen to the webinar today, if you have any questions that you'd like to present to the group, please use the chat toolbar on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll then pull all of those questions together and ask some of our panelists. So with that, Victoria, take it away.
I'm really delighted to be here. I love working with Guild Quality. You know, we share a lot of the same clients, and the clients that we share are people who love business. They love the idea of being business owners. They get excited about the putting the puzzle pieces together in the right way, and it's an awesome experience to work with these folks. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm really excited about this topic as well. Now, while the topic is how founders successfully grow their business while preserving core values, I really want to touch on two elements of this. One of the elements is growth in general, right? A lot of people come into our community, into our world, saying, I want to grow, I want to grow. And we got to say, okay, awesome, we can help you grow. Why do you want to grow? What do you want to get out of it? I just want to grow. Well, that's great, but you need to be thinking about a few things before you take the jump to start ramping up revenue. The very first thing you have to think about is the fact you need to know your numbers, right? Now, I'm sure you've heard this before. This is nothing new, but I tell you, I'm on the phone with remodelers day in and day out, and so many people do not understand how to read what's going on in the business through their numbers, through their financial numbers, their productivity metrics, the hours they're working. There's all sorts of numbers that if you understand the story they're telling, then you can make the right decisions. But there's no point in building a company, revving up revenue, growing until you understand and are confident that the formula you're using when you're smaller delivers the kind of results you expect. In our world, that expectation should include an above average owner compensation, business hours that allow you to have a great life, and a solid, consistent net profit. When our members come to us, and we look at their financials twice a year, and it's really exciting. Somebody comes to us with a budget showing a 3 or 4% net profit as their plan for the year, we send them back to the drawing board. Because if you start out with a 3 or 4%, you know, pretty darn rarely do you actually beat your projections. Most of the time, you have a few percentage points of slippage. So we want to see a plan for 8 to 10% net profit over your salary, and make sure that that plan works before you ramp it up. One of the things that happens as companies grow is they find they need more cash to grease the wheels of this operation. So in addition to understanding how to price, how your overhead and your decisions in growing overhead affect the company as a whole, you have to also understand your cash flow to make sure you've got enough money on hand to get through the challenges that will occur. So, as I'm saying here, one of the pieces of research I was doing, there was a great quote, and it was, the value of a business is dependent upon cash flow, not profits. I remember reading a study several years ago that talked about a group of businesses that had grown tremendously in one year, and half of them went out of business the next year. How could that be? And it was simply because they didn't have the cash to keep the business running in the way that they really needed it to run. So, know your numbers. Make sure you have enough cash on hand to run that. So those are two things you really need to think about before you grow. Now, a second thing that I hear, you know, people come in, yeah, I want to grow. I want to make more money. Well, okay, great. Give me some goals. Give me something specific to work with. And my team, we can help you get your business to deliver. But we need to know what you're really talking about. What's more money? One of the things that I highly recommend to all business owners is to do a personal financial plan or work with a registered financial planner, usually a fee-only financial planner, and figure out what kind of money do you really need from your business to live the life you want to live now and in the future. So you might have a couple of different plans for your personal finances, just like you do for your business finances. Maybe it's, okay, this is the bottom threshold. We want to live decently when we retire and for a long time. We need this amount of money. And then you might have a good and a better and a best plan for personal finances, just like you could do for your business. Once you know those numbers, what do you need personally, then we can flip it around and figure out how to get that money out of your business, which really is a tool to help you get what you want out of life. Right? I mean, that's what it is. You're not your business. Your business is a tool to help you live the life you want. So get a personal financial plan, figure out what you need to get out of the business, and then we have a goal that we can reach for and measure. Now also, people say, yeah, I want to grow. Well, great. You want to grow, but do you realize what that means for your responsibilities? You have to be ready and excited to manage people. If you're not excited about managing people, you might have a bit of a challenge in growing your business. You can only grow so far before you have to start getting your results through people versus through processes and things. You have to be ready to delegate, and you have to be ready to manage the issues that come up with any group of people. So you think about that and know that you're ready for it. Anybody can learn to be a good manager, I believe, although I also believe it's one of the more challenging things I've ever done. But there's a lot of good resources out there to help. Okay, so that was growth. Now let's talk a little bit about core values. Every company has core values, whether you know it or not. I mean, it exists. Usually in our businesses, it exists because the owner has put their own personal core values into the company. Honesty, integrity, it might be helping your staff, it might be high levels of customer service, but your core values are really the seeds of company culture. So think about what's important to you in your business, and then think about, are those important values currently the standards within your business? And if they aren't, then you need to think about making sure that everyone understands what's important to the business and start driving that through the business, which again is going to drive your company culture. Now, your core values do a lot of things. It's a big list of things that core values do, but the basic tenet here is that your core values, the company's core values, act as a filter for everyone in the company. Everyone makes decisions through the filter of your core values. So they're going to be thinking, if I make this decision and I turn left, is that going to represent the company's, what's important to the company? If its answer is no, then they won't make a decision going that direction. They'll know that it doesn't fit with what's important to the company. So it's a filter that really will help everybody make the right decisions on behalf of the business. Now, defining core values, it's not just warm, fuzzy stuff. You know, we used to hear that all the time. Who cares about core values? This is business. I'm not going to get all warm, fuzzy with all my employees. I just want them to do their job. But in fact, core values, it can be a differentiator for you and your business. It can make your company stand head and shoulders above the crowd in any competitive market once you understand the effect they have on everybody and the effect they have on your clients and their feeling toward the company and so on. Now, Zappos CEO said that the act of defining the core values for their company positively impacted its growth to over $1 billion in 10 years. Now, that is not just warm and fuzzy. That is down and dirty facts. That's money. That's measurable benefit to the business. So it's not just about warm and fuzzy, and you're going to hear more about that from the three business owners in just a moment. So core values, they drive company culture. Each decision you make, this person who's a contributor to Forbes, each decision you make, each person you hire, each success you deliver contributes to the development of your corporate culture. So as your employees are making these decisions and looking through this filter, it's really about what happens when the manager, you, leave the room. Are your employees going to be on top of it, following what you feel is important, or is it all going to go to hell in a handbasket and fall apart the minute you leave the room? If the latter is what happens in your business, then it's time to get serious about identifying and defining what's important to you and then communicating it clearly and constantly to everybody else on the team. So again, you're going to hear a little bit more about this in just a minute from the three very smart and savvy business owners that are on the panel with us today. Mark?
Great. Well, Victoria, thank you. And I would agree. We have three very smart and savvy business owners on the panel today, and I want to introduce them. First, Jonas Karnmark. In 1987, Jonas founded Karnmark Design Build to realize his creative goal, to bring home remodeling dreams to life with beauty and purpose. Homeowners throughout the Washington, D.C. area and nationally have celebrated the company's results. Regularly honored as a top designer and builder, Karnmark's appearances range from Good Morning America to the Food Network's Ultimate Kitchens. Karnmark's been a member of Guild Quality since 2006. Next, Bob Fleming. Classic Remodeling and Construction was founded in 1989 by Bob Fleming and is now the largest firm of its kind in Greater Charleston. This statistic amazes me. More than 90% of their projects come from their existing client base or from referrals. Additionally, they've been named Remodeler of the Year for 4 consecutive years by the Charleston Trident Home Builders Association, and they've earned numerous national awards for excellence in remodeling. Classic Remodeling has been a member of Guild Quality since 2003. And last but certainly not least, Todd Jackson. Todd's the owner of Jackson Design and Remodeling, and he exemplifies the spirit and practices of a successful remodeling entrepreneur. Jackson Design and Remodeling's unified team of in-house architects, designers, and construction professionals have served the San Diego area since 1989 with multiple award-winning design-build remodeling projects for over 2,000 satisfied clients. Jackson Design and Remodeling has been a member of Guild Quality since 2006. So we have a great panel. I would encourage everyone in the audience to submit your questions via the chat toolbar and GoToWebinar, and we'll queue those up and ask them of the panel after the prepared questions are complete. So Victoria, back to you.
Okay, great. I'm really excited again about hearing and having a discussion about this. So I'm encouraging also, along with Mark, to get these questions in. It's going to be it's a rare opportunity to be able to ask these folks anything you want. So get your questions in there. Now, at some point, everybody on this panel made the decision to pursue the next phase of growth, and transitioning to a business with more scale. These folks started out just like most of the rest of us. So when did you decide to grow, and why did it happen? And Jonas, let's start off with you.
Well, thanks, Victoria. Early on, I think we all went through the process of handing off hats. You wear a lot of hats as you start, and we took those small steps. And then I joined some peer networking groups, and there was a time when I was in Remodeler's Advantage in a mentor group where they were focused on exit strategies and retirement and sort of winding down. And I at the time, I wanted to grow, so I switched groups to a growth group. And at the time, we were exposed to something called the Grenier study, or the 5 stages of growth. And through that, I realized that I didn't want to grow big per se. I wanted to grow strong. And so we focused a lot on just building what we call bench strength. And that was the biggest decision in growth that I made.
Okay, great. That was incredible, and I know some of your staff, and you really have not made the mistake that I see so often with people afraid to spend money on highly talented people. I mean, you've brought on very talented, high-level people in your company.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Bob, let's ask you, when did you decide to grow, and what happened?
Well, so it was probably about 14 or 15 years ago, and I had 2 purposes. I wanted to hire visibility in the community, and I didn't want to be the guy. I didn't want to be the guy that was managing, selling, handling everything. And then also there was some risk management involved. We were developing a niche in larger projects, and I didn't want more than 10% of my annual revenue to be from any one specific client, so that I'm guarding those eggs in the basket, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So you decided you didn't want that to happen. What was the first step you took when you were transitioning this?
Well, I mean, the first step is, a lot of work with org charts and job descriptions and figuring out who needs to do what and how the job would flow through the system. And for me, there were several goals there. One goal for me was what could we take off my plate that I didn't enjoy doing? Right. And the second goal in that system was how can we develop a system that appears seamless to the client?
Okay, great, good. We'll come back to that one too. Todd, tell us about what happened when you made this decision.
Well, we had been kind of doing we were more of an installation company, and I wanted to transition to more of a project development. I was looking for a little bit more professional, and looking to do larger scale projects, a little bit more complex. And just kind of like Bob, first thing we had done is put out an org chart and kind of look at what kind of income we want to make and what is that going to take and how do we fill those roles, and again, what can I take off of my plate? So very, very similar.
Now, Todd, you said you wanted to do jobs that were larger, more complex. Why?
When we were looking at it, as an installation company, it's almost like you've got to prepare for a very quick, you have a 1-week install or that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And we knew that and it takes just as much effort to sell those kind of projects versus, a complex $200,000 project with a few moving parts. But it also allowed us to be more as the project management side. It also reduced some of that exposure for that installation, that we can hire good quality subcontractors to be able to do that, perform that work. But it helps us protect our slippage also.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. Now let's go backwards this time. Since Todd, you were already talking about this, what steps did you personally take to transition from an operator to more of a leader and visionary? And talk a little bit about how your role has changed.
Well, I used to be the carpenter, and then I was the project manager, and then I also helped as the designer. And really what we've done is been able to infill that, and part of that is finding good quality people that can then run and take over that project and a designer who can help, build design the project that people wanted, but we're looking for more complexity. So setting up systems and processes, and in the beginning they weren't perfect, but the nice thing about a good system is that when it doesn't quite work, you're able to start to tweak it and tweak it. And that's the whole idea behind having a good system, is that you're not dependent upon one individual. And it's allowed us to grow to a team of multiple designers and multiple project managers and still get the same results to clients.
So as you were adding people and developing the processes, did you find that you were able to stop doing 1 or 2 or 3 of the day-to-days, and did you begin spending more of your time in the development of these processes, or did you delegate that piece?
I was able to actually kind of break away from the production side, break away from some of the design side. So we handed those portions off. Kind of as the visionary, I kind of had an idea of how I wanted the company to run, but then got key managers in there, and the goal is for me was to hire great talent around me and get their input, and also so I'm feeding off of other people's ideas, but then still packaging it all so where, okay, this is the way that we're going to be able to get this process done and make our clients happy.
Okay. All right. Great. Bob, what about you? What did you personally take? What steps did you personally take to transition?
Well, so for me, I felt like the production side was pretty easy to fill, and that's more of a repetitive sort of task, and I enjoy the sales and the design side. So initially, I jumped in and I became the rainmaker, and I hired in younger design people that that had some background in architecture, who had a lot of enthusiasm, who wanted to learn the business, and so they became my design assistants. I became the rainmaker. And then as I went through that process, then we started hiring salespeople who could replace some of what I was doing so that I wasn't in all of the initial sales calls. And so, that gave us a more balanced sales process, I believe. And so we started hiring more specialized salespeople. We have a kitchen and bath guy here. We have a small project guy. I still tend to handle the larger things. But then the challenges in that is that I had an employee who'd been my production manager, and he was helping with estimating and helping these young people put their packages together. And he could see the writing on the wall that they were starting to kind of shoot up through the company and maybe pass him. And we had a lot of challenges there. And so one of the tough things is that we had several conversations, and finally I had to bring him in my office and say, listen, something's broken here, and you seem to be the one that's broken in the in all the communications that are going on. So I had to let a 13-year employee go to allow the system to continue to grow, because he just didn't want to be a part of that growth.
I think that's a really good point, Bob, because that happens a lot. When a company grows and you've been plugging along with the people that started with you, and as the company grows and the complexity grows, and you have to have a different set of knowledge for some of these positions. So from time to time, go ahead.
I'm sorry, different set of knowledge and different mindset, and I think going into it, you need to have those discussions with that employee to say, we're growing, this is where we're going to go, this is what we need to do to get there, and what happens if you don't get there with me, and so that if you have that conversation ahead of time, then they know whether they've met that goal or not, and they know and see the writing on the wall, and so it's not a surprise when you let them go.
Right, good point. Okay, Jonas, how about you?
Well, when I first started, we were a general contractor, and we got into design build very early, about 2 years in, starting in '89. So at that time, I was hiring graduate students out of college in architecture that would work part-time in the field, thinking they'd become better architects that way, and I also had production staff. But really, they were dependent on me to ask all these questions. And at the time, I was also joining NARI, and I found that as I got more involved, chapter president and on the national board, the sort of list of silly questions at the door where everybody just wanted my opinion on everything started to dwindle, because I wasn't there, and they had to make decisions for themselves. And that was really the big break for us, to not have me be involved in each one of those processes. And I think the other thing that really set me in terms of looking at leadership and what my vision was looking at, as Bob mentioned earlier, sort of that self-awareness of what do I want to do? Where are my strengths? And a lot of times we talk about sort of high dollar time, where each employee is spending their best amount of time, or doing the best tasks for the best amount of gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was funny. Today I was talking to somebody who's trying to break through the $1 million range, and it's so typical. He was doing everything down to the bookkeeping and couldn't see his way through. So that's what our conversation was spent on. So I think that knowing what you like and understanding how to delegate that, and understanding that in many cases it allows you to do activities that will bring more money, more productivity, more results to the business is really key.
One little tip there that I found is that many times as an owner, and I've seen this amongst many peers throughout the country, you want to control sort of the damage that can happen. But you could also change that to celebrating mistakes. And we do a fair bit of that in terms of celebrating what we call original mistakes. And I do a lot of skiing and teach skiing and stuff like that, and we used to say, if you're not falling, you're not learning. Well, so you need to sort of know that you're going to have things that go wrong, but they're going to learn better if they're allowed to make a mistake once. They won't make it again. If they keep making that mistake, then that's something different. But allowing yourself to have that little bit of slippage really empowers your employees.
Okay, and that's a brave thing to do, don't you think?
Scary, I guess, yeah.
As long as you can, I have a feeling that you probably have other processes in place to help you make sure that it's not going to be dramatically costly mistakes.
Well, one thing, as we learned in the Grenier study in the 5 stages of growth, every level of growth you're going to have to evolve. It's sort of evolution versus revolution, so you need to go through that pain. And if you can plan for it and set aside the cash that you need, and just sort of get ready, embrace yourself that you need to go through it. It's just like, getting to the car through a rainstorm. You just got to get through it.
Yep. Okay, good point. Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is, what were the results when you first made the transition? And as you became more of a working on your business and more of a manager of people, where did you see the biggest challenges? Let's start with Bob this time.
Well, I mean, the example I used earlier was the challenge of having to get rid of a long-term employee who didn't fit the new culture. But obviously the benefit is that it frees me up to do the things that I want to do, and then I get to pass off the tasks that I don't like to do.
So when you first started to make this change, did you find that you had to work harder, that you had to, the company was less profitable, or, what exactly happened in the short term?
Well, I mean, you definitely, as you hire new people and there's more people in the mix, there's a possibility for communication breakdown and learning that maybe the systems and the details that are in my mind aren't in that new hire's mind, and so they need to, so how do you onboard them and how quickly can you get them up so they know that? And so, so there's times when you'll have a new employee who's installing something in the field and he's doing it the way he used to do it instead of the way you have done it. And you're right, if they make that original mistake, that's good, because then, if they say, hey, I won't do that again, I see why that's the wrong way. That's great. Obviously, if they're making the same mistake over and over, that's a different discussion.
Okay, thank you. Todd, what about you? What were some of the things that happened during the first several months or a year after you started making the transition, and where were your challenges?
Well, I would say as we grew, and we grew at a pretty fast pace, we kind of made that decision as the things were really picking up and allowed our company to grow really fast. One of the tricks that we had was when we went to hire people, they were, I had a great project manager, and as we grew to 2 and then we needed a 3rd, he came to me and said, this is not the company that I want to work with. I don't want multiple project managers. I want to have that, So it's really, for us, it was really making sure that, defining the people that we really want to come into our company. And then, now we're having, the next step was to train managers to manage people. So I'm managing managers.
Yes.
And now we have a design department of 5 or 6. Somebody has to then manage those people. So it's it's a secondary handoff and making sure that really at that point people understand what the culture is and what we want to take to market and how we want to do that.
It's kind of interesting. So like Bob was saying about his one guy who couldn't grow with the company and he had to let the production manager go. In your case, it was the project manager coming to you and saying, this isn't what I want. So it's a sort of the flip side. Were you surprised?
I mean, I think sometimes people want, like he wanted a boutique to work for a boutique company. We were looking to be a little bit more larger and a little bit more professional, and I like processes, I like predictability, and sometimes when you're a little bit smaller, you can be a little bit, you're a lot more flexible, a little bit more cowboyish.
Yep.
And so we understood, but it was a good learning lesson, right? Make sure people understand where you're headed before you invite them on board.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, Jonas?
I think it's similar. Really, the area of management that was the biggest challenge was growing those managers and picking the right people to understand that it's not just doing the task. One thing that I found early on was I did have a lot of independent, really good workers, sort of worker bees that really enjoy getting stuff done. And we all love those people, but they, for them, their joy is not managing other people, and that can be a source of conflict or different things. So we found that we really needed to have a team management system at that stage where we called it the leadership team, where everybody was brought in to make the decisions and everybody left knowing what decision was made so that the company vision was intact. And that's one thing that I've found very powerful, is to have everybody give their opinion, and even if they don't agree with the final opinion, if they've had their say, then they're able to walk out of there feeling good about what was decided.
Mm-hmm. That sort of follows the tenets of Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions. I believe is the terminology he uses, consensus, that you may not agree, but you agree to stand by the decision that was made.
Exactly.
When you walk out of the room, you own it as well as everybody else. That's great. Now, when you say everybody, do you mean everybody?
As we grew, it used to be that we would have team meetings with the company as it was smaller, and then it would be departmental meetings, and then it became the managers of each of those departments in terms of a leadership team, and that's what it is for us today. We have a secondary team underneath that called a goal management team, where individuals from different departments join that team to move sort of what we call quadrant 2 items forward, the things that you never have time to work on. We sort of push that and have that be an agenda. I think it's also really important to be aware of the personalities that are involved and how that affects the culture and plan accordingly.
Just to help the listeners understand, how many employees do you have, Jonas?
17.
And Bob?
18.
And Todd?
37.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good stuff there. Okay, so we're talking about core values, that they're driving the company culture. Would you, describe your mission, your values, your company culture? And it existed. I'm sure you loved it, but then you needed to preserve it. What steps did you take to preserve it? Todd, let's start with you this time.
Well, I think ultimately our goal was to surround ourselves with greatness, and really making sure that we only hire the best, and the people who come in, we really want to make sure that those are top-notch people. One of the things that we do is, before somebody can get in, is we do now a group hire, and we don't do what we call plug and play, meaning that years ago, if we had a position for a designer or a carpenter or an architect, somebody would say, hey, I know a great carpenter. He'd come in, do a quick interview, and he'd be on the payroll in no time. Mm-hmm. We also realized soon that that person would probably be gone within 6 months. Versus now, when people come in, we will have more of a group hire. So the manager does their pre-screening, does their first interview round, then 2 or 3 key people in that department will also do the interview. And then we'll have a final interview where that poor person will come in and be interviewed by about 8 people. And
That
then
has to be some
kinda
pressure.
Yeah, well, exactly. You either make it or you don't. Sometimes people will crumble. But the nice thing is it's either thumbs up or thumbs down. And when you give the entire team the responsibility of the hire, they're going to be more proactive in order to be able to make that person successful.
Great. Now, okay, explain your comment about you want to be surrounded by greatness. So I'm assuming you're going for this greatness as you're hiring. Define greatness? I mean, what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for in these great people?
Well, it's, phenomenal talent, obviously, great attitude, and a sense of, I kind of look at, part of our core values is a sense of fairness for all. And so instead of, it's easy in a company to be all about the money, right? Or we get all soft and it's all about the client, and then it's all about the employee. And somewhere you need to be intense about all of those. Yeah. Somewhat equally. You know what I mean? You can't give up money, but you know that sometimes you're going to keep that client happy. Mm-hmm. Or, when we sold something and maybe it wasn't quite clarified, hey, maybe you're going to have to spend a few bucks. Mm-hmm. And I think your people, as you do those things and allow your managers to make those decisions, they understand that, it needs to be fair for all. And that doesn't mean you're going to give a client money because they want money. Mm-hmm. It's what's the problem, what's the issue, how do we resolve the issue? So.
Right. Okay, great. Jonas, what about your mission, values, and culture?
Well, early on, I'd heard a lot about it and knew that I should have one and thought I did, but I took a little personal retreat in 97 and came up with a mission and vision, did a lot of thinking about it and reading about it, and I wanted something that was, in my own mind, sustainable, like I could look up 10 years and we still would not have reached it. I wanted something that would always grow. And we always, or I guess this comes from me personally, I always wanted to improve and learn, and I didn't want to be the judge of whether I had done that. I really like third-party validations, and that's probably why we like to enter awards and stuff like that. So I came up with this idea that I wanted to be the most respected design-build firm, having pioneered design-build as a process. And I knew that I would never be able to be that, but I could always be working towards that whenever, and that was really not my decision about whether we were that yet. It was really outside of us, and that would help create my culture inside. And that's really been something that's sustained us, and the way that we preserve that is just always going back to it. We do a lot of culture talks in the company, and we sort of have these quarterly meetings, and I just go back through all of the mission and vision and what it means. It was a way that we developed our core values. So I think it's the owner's vision, but then supported by the buy-in of the company, because it's not just the owner. The whole company has to believe it.
How do you talk to your employees about what's in it for them? You want to be the most respected company? Great. Why should they care about your vision? What's in it for them?
It seems to be really fun for them when they go somewhere and people have heard all about us, especially for young new employees, and they feel like they're part of something really big and something cool. And I think all companies struggle with different things. We do, but it sort of helps them rise above the bumps in the road, knowing that there's a sort of this goal that is really cool to attain.
Okay, all right, great. So, Bob, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your values and culture.
Yeah, so mission, so I'm just going to read a little bit from that. We will bring passion to every step of the process, and we'll finish every project with the same enthusiasm that we started with. We will adhere to the highest standards of integrity, and we'll honor ourselves, our clients, and our trade partners. We are united to achieve one goal, to provide an exceptional client experience from initial design through project completion and beyond. And so I think part of that for us is that, we have a clause in our contract with no surprise renovation, that basically when we're talking with that client up front, we're the professionals here. We're going to make sure that we think about all the little challenges that can come up, and this is the responsibility of the employees to make sure that, we're not going to miss stuff. If we're tearing a wall out, we need to make sure that there's plumbing in that wall, and we've allowed for that. so we don't go back and hit the client after the fact. And we follow through with the same thing on the warranty, is that we've got a very extensive warranty that reaches out as far as 8 years on some of our components. And so the employees are all focused on, hey, I got to deliver a good project for this client because, we're tracking how many times we come back if we haven't completed the project properly.
So you've really turned that mission into, and that vision into practical steps.
That's what we wanted, so that they're thinking like a company owner out on site, and they're thinking, how can I get this job done efficiently, but not such that I'm shortcutting it and it's going to cost the company something down the road or cost the client something down the road.
So you've developed this vision, you've put these clauses in, you've made it very practical, very measurable, you've taught people how these things connect. Can you also share with us, and I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but a couple of the core values as your company has them defined?
Well, honesty and integrity, and if a client asks you a question and you don't know the answer, don't make it up. Explain to them, I don't know, but you know what? Somebody in the company does know, and I'm going to find that out for you today.
Okay, great, good. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. That's great stuff, you guys. How did you successfully, we've talked a little bit about hiring, we talked about the group hires and some of those things. So, and I think, it was Todd, you were talking about the group hire, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to skip over you for a minute. We'll come back and let you talk about training them and delegating. So let's talk a little bit about hiring. Jonas and then Bob.
We do a similar hiring panel when we hire someone, and when we do bring them on board, well, a couple things. We also use the DISC personality profile. We have a quick way of doing a sort of a quick DISC, and that helps us ask questions on that second interview. Then as we bring them in, the first step of onboarding is for me to go through the mission and vision, the core values, the culture speak in terms of what we're all about and where we're going. And then we use a systematized system of all of the tasks that an employee is going to do are set out in front of them, and it's their responsibility to learn them as opposed to the manager's responsibility to teach them. And that way they can use the entire team to learn. And every week they can meet with their manager and say, where am I on this particular task? Well, I've seen it once, so I don't know it that well, or I can do that blindfolded. And that really helps sort of see where the training needs to go, because often you want to train on one thing, but an opportunity to train on another comes up, like say there's a sub walkthrough. Well, that person should really attend that. So we move it around and are flexible with it, but are always constantly tracking it.
That's great. I think it's wonderful that that they have the responsibility to get through the training, and you're not having to push them or pull them through it. Do you all remember when we went to visit Zingerman's Community of Businesses in Ann Arbor, and they had their employees, they gave them a passport, quote-unquote passport, at the beginning of the first day in their onboarding or orientation. And in the passport were all the different departments and the trainings that they had to complete. And it was up to them to get that passport stamped each step of the way. So it's excellent idea.
Very similar.
Yeah, very much so. So great idea. Bob.
Well, so first off, as far as getting good employees, we're always looking for good people. So even when we're not in a hiring mode, we're still receiving resumes. We get resumes from all over the country when folks are thinking about Charleston's a great place to come and live. And so we'll take the time to interview them, explaining to them that we don't have a position now, and we've hired some talent that way. We do a lot of the same thing with the interview process. I feel that if I hire an employee and say, hey, here's the new employee that's going to work with the team, it's not as viable, not as believable as if that team sat around the table and we do the same sort of interview process at the final interview. There's 6 or 7 people in the room, and it is very intimidating. But it shows you how that person's going to react and behave under stress and pressure. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, one of our very successful hires is Russ, who does a lot of our kitchen and bath sales. We actually hired Russ in a downturn when we really probably shouldn't have hired him. but he sounded really good. I brought him in, interviewed him. One of the things he said was he was interviewing me just as I was interviewing him. He said, I'm extremely concerned about whoever I go to work for, that when I sell a job to a client, that client's taken care of the way that I promised them. And I immediately thought, that's the guy that I want selling jobs for me.
Right.
But I thought, if I go back to the team and tell them this, they're going to go, oh, yeah, he told you that, blah, blah, blah. So we brought him back in, and sitting around the table with 7 people, he made the same statement, and, and it was very believable. And so everybody said, yeah, he's going to be a good fit. We want him here. So I think having him involved in that, that makes everybody that's currently working for us responsible to make sure that new hire is successful.
Now, what if you would have felt very strongly about him, loved the guy, really felt that he'd be a great part of the team, brought him in for that second group interview, and afterward the team said, not so much?
Probably wouldn't hire him.
Okay.
Why
not?
Close to, well, I feel like, when we're all voting, and I would have to have a very extenuating circumstance to be able to override the rest of the team.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, Todd, would you do me a favor? Define for us onboarding, and then tell us what you do.
Yeah, it's sort of like if we have a salesperson, prior to coming on, and they go through the entire interview process, and we actually have anybody who's maybe done some Sandler or some other sales type training, we have them tested to make sure that they're actually going to be a good salesperson, and what that background is going to be, and what we're going to need to do to bring that person on board, and how much training we're going to need to do. But it starts from day one. I can't have a salesperson who doesn't know all about our company. And so what we do is, we're going to give you a binder, and here's week 1, and you need to know all these things by week 1 and week 2, and you're the one that is responsible for this, and then we'll come back in and we'll work with you and test you and get you the information. The other thing that we're going to do there is, you're going to learn this information about the company from this individual. So it's not one person just training you. It's, hey, let me talk. Maria in accounting is going to show you how our billing process is going to be. Okay, the production manager, they're going to talk to you about how that handoff needs to be. I may take the role of, hey, I'm going to show you how that scope of work is going to be. So, but that, and at the end of the day, and some people can fast forward that. Some people may take a little bit longer, but it's information that you must have, and or actions that you must have taken, such as maybe you must go out on 5 leads with another salesperson. Okay, you have to sit through. Maybe you're sitting through a presentation, a second presentation, and a close. So to see how the Jackson process works.
Right.
So,
right. Okay, that's great. So I really like the idea that you're having other people in the organization do a lot, really, of the onboarding, because it gets it off of your back, and it gives them a different point of view. But you can also see that if someone did not fully embrace your core values and the company culture, you wouldn't want them doing that. So it's even more important to be communicating and making sure that everybody is in the same place and understands things the same way. Would you agree?
Yes, and Vic, one of the other things about team hiring, it's kind of funny, is when we started doing it, and obviously there are people we didn't hire, and but over the years in the design community and in the production community, what has happened around us is it's hard to be hired at Jackson. And if you're hired, you've made it. You know what I mean? And so our turnover is less. And for people who get hired, they understand that they've gone through a process, and it's not, it's just not, at a whim, oh, that sounds good, I'll hire you.
That is a great result of that process, isn't it? Good for you.
Well, you get good people.
That's great. I love hearing that. Okay, let's go on to the next question. How have you maintained quality and service standards when you're not involved? I mean, we know that that's a big deal for a lot of people. How could I possibly leave it and not go out to the job site every day? How can I be sure? So, Jonas, what about you? How have you maintained these quality standards?
Well, early on, it was kind of a joke in the field. But if I came out to a job site, they would say I had they called it the Kernemark eye, where instead of saying, "Hey, how are you? How's everything? How are the kids?" I would go, "That looks a 16th out," across the room, and that became sort of our quality measure. That when I stopped going out to the job sites, everybody knew that, well, if he was here, he would see it, and then it became sort of this thing that people would look at it like that. But I think we took another sort of, you might call it brave, but scary step early on, or probably 8, 9 years ago, where we had tried doing our own surveying, and if we did a customer survey, we'd probably get 30% return, but we joined Guild Quality, and that really made a big difference in terms of really knowing what our clients thought of us and getting that feedback. And it was kind of bumpy at first, because our first 2 projects that we had surveyed, we actually didn't get that good a score, and so we thought, oh, is this really the right thing? Now people are going to know we're no good, blah, blah, blah. But what happened was it just kept building and kept building, and it's so exciting when we get the scores in, and everybody wants to know how we did and how the client feels, and so that feels it's a really good safety net.
That's great. That's a great thing to know. And without being too much of a plug for Guild Quality, I talk to my folks about it all the time, because the depth of information you can get is so wonderful, like how, which project manager is getting better grades than another, and so on. And, one of the most effective times to market to your clients is when a mistake happens, or when something bad happens, or when you get a poor review from someone, so you can jump right back with them and say, how can we make this better? What can we do to make your experience what we wanted it always to be? The way you handle those less than stellar reviews is huge. Can have a huge effect. Turn somebody into an apostle.
That's
right. Bob, what about you? What have you done to make sure that quality standards are as high as you want them?
The thing is that feedback loop, making sure that you still have a way to stay connected to the client. So if it's a job that I sell, then I'm getting the feedback through my project craftsman on the job, or through the production manager, about how that job is going. But if it's a job that Russ or Jason have sold, I've never met the client. I don't know the client. I only know what's going on with that client from the feedback that I get either in my weekly meetings or the report that I get back from Guild Quality. And so we actually interview 3 times with Guild Quality on a larger project, meaning a job that we're going to be there 2 months, 3 months. We're gonna survey them at the beginning of the job to find out how our design team did and how responsive they were, and how did they work with you on selections, and did you get value, and were they responsive to you. And then we're going to do another one just after the pre-drywall walkthrough to see how our crews are doing as far as neat and clean. Are they answering your questions? Do you think they're professional? Do you like the subs? And then at the end of the job, then how do we do on the job? Are you happy with it? Quality, value, all those sort of things. But what's nice about doing those interim surveys is that if something comes back as a problem, that client may tell the survey something that they won't tell you. So we had a job going a couple of years ago where some of the dust protection had fallen down, and the guys didn't do a good job of putting it back up. And so the client reported that at the pre-drywall, just after the pre-drywall survey. So we were able to get back out there, apologize, get the dust protection back up, do the cleaning up we need to do, and then the next score we got back was, wow, you guys did a great job. And so, being able to go in there and respond and fix something, it makes you the hero in the end.
Right. That's awesome.
I also have to, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I also have to say it's great as a company owner. I mean, I'm just thrilled when I get glowing reports back on the designer or the project craftsman, or even the helper that was out on the job site who went above and beyond and took care of the client. Those are just invaluable to me, to have that kind of feedback on my company with a client that I never met and never spoke with.
That's great. Awesome. And good job for jumping on that instead of doing what so many small business owners do and put their head in the sand and don't want to deal with a problem. You jumped on it, and that was great. Now, Todd, I'm going to hold off on you for a minute because we're getting, we're having a great time talking, and I want to get some of the questions in that Mark is compiling over there. So I want to see what the next one is. Okay, so let's just wrap it up, this part of it up, and let's start with you, Todd. Give me some words of wisdom for founders who are ready to take their business to the next level.
Learn all you can. You never know what you don't know, and you still have to pay for it. So.
Okay, great. So give me 2 things they should do. Keep learning. What exactly?
Keep learning. A plug for you, Vic, is join either Remodelers Advantage or another peer group, and you will excel your professional and your personal life tenfold by having input by just peers of yourself that want to help challenge you and help you grow.
Great. Bob?
Well, nobody has all the answers in the room, and a couple of things that I would say. Number one, the peer group has been great for me to be able to sit in there, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can look at how somebody else is doing it. I can pick up the phone. They'll talk me through it if I need to. The other thing that I like to do as I travel around the country is I'll actually call somebody that I've heard about who I may not even know and say, hey, I heard great things about your company. Could I come out and see you? And you'd be surprised how many times they'll say, sure, come on out. And when you arrive, that company owner will spend a couple of hours with you opening his doors and showing you what's going on. And, I mean, that just advances you light years.
Great. Thank you very much. Jonas?
Well, one thing I found is don't underestimate how much personality plays into making a team and looking at or basically just thinking about self-awareness of all the individuals and then the self-awareness of the team as a whole and what you might be missing. And I've learned so much about that through other members in my association with Remodelers Advantage. And I remember going back through what my commitments were. I've been in for over 10 years, and looking back each meeting, what the commitments were. And they were really all the steps to the growth that we've had over time. And it's amazing what a group of peers who have made mistakes themselves and are willing to share can generate. It's incredible synergy.
Great. Thank you. Now, I know that we're getting a little bit toward the end, but I'd like to get some questions in. I know Mark would from some of the folks who are on the line. So I'm going to ask for permission to go a couple of minutes over, if that's okay with you, Mark.
Absolutely. And as before, if we've gotten a number of questions during the course of the meeting. If you have any additional questions, just type those into the chat toolbar. In the interest of time, and I know that we are kind of right at 1 hour, I propose we do a few questions in kind of a speed round. I'll ask one of our panelists to respond to a few questions, and then we'll do one wrap-up question where everybody will have 30 seconds to respond. How's that sound?
Great.
All right, great. So the first question I'm going to pose this one to Todd. Todd, what were some of the mistakes that you've made on this growth journey, and what did you learn from them?
A couple of the biggies. One of those is Vic talked about cash is king, and at one time when we were growing, I had a lot of cash, and we did a huge, almost a $500,000 remodel inside of our design center, and I had my CPA tell me, hey, you know what, you have cash, spend it. And the lesson learned, we finished that remodel in March of 2008. So it's like having a red Corvette with no gasoline. So it's just keep your cash, and I should have borrowed money a little bit. So those are kind of lessons learned, and surround yourself with great people. Never underestimate and just settle for somebody who comes in your organization. So both of those.
All right, great advice. Second question, I'm going to pose this to Bob. Bob, if when you were building your business, if you were sort of the salesperson rainmaker profile, what was the most important position that you filled beyond yourself? Was it production manager, office manager, designer, executive assistant, or otherwise?
They're all important. Well, I mean, if you're a smaller guy around $1 million, like the company that Victoria was talking about earlier, I think definitely office manager, get that bookkeeping off your plate and answering the phone and all of those mundane tasks. That's an easy hire. For me, it was getting some good designers on me who could, meet with the client. I mean, so I would paint the picture of, this is where the addition needs to go, and this is about the volume it needs to be, and this is about what your budget is. And then I needed somebody under me who would come in and really do a great job designing that and working on the budget with the client, and then helping them with all of the selections. For us, the selections is a big thing. That hand-holding through the selection process that just makes the client feel so much more at ease with what they're doing. So that was an important hire for me.
Okay, great. The next question I'm going to pose is to Jonas. Jonas, this question is about onboarding, and the person asking the question finds that that the onboarding process, the onboarding meeting, is a great time to share the company's values and mission. But this company is growing, and they have a number of remote employees, and they're finding that it's more and more difficult to have those one-on-one onboarding meetings with the company founder and the new employee. How important do you feel that it is to personally meet with new employees, and how do you kind of manage the process of sharing your mission and values in the onboarding process?
Well, I think you could do some type of PowerPoint through webinar if you have remote employees. I find that one trick I learned, and I think this was through a Yanklevich study or something like that, but there's 3 questions that if you ask the employee at any given moment and give them the opportunity to to talk to you about it. We used to call this a one-on-one, but basically not meeting them in the hallway or a phone call just casually, but just set aside a specific amount of time to answer, do you know everything that's expected of you? Do you have all the tools you need to do your job? And do you know I care? If they can answer yes to all of those, there's really no excuse for anything, but it often brings up so many little things that, for instance, oh, yeah, I guess I have everything. Are you sure? Well, actually, I don't have a connection to the server or whatever, and it brings up these little pieces that are that last 10% that can make them, a superstar.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Todd because this is a question specifically for him. Todd, as you move from install services to full service and becoming a more complex design, build, remodeler, what were the first or the best steps that you made to accomplish this?
We changed our marketing, right? We targeted what we wanted to go. We realized what we were looking to try and do. And we were blessed with a few anchor-type projects. For me, I did bring on that admin, and our first hire is actually an architect who came on board with us, and then we kind of infilled those things, infilled that probably 6 months later with an interior designer who started working towards that design process that we currently have today. Probably very similar to Bob. It's all about those selections and hand-holding, and that kind of really, did make us very different than our competitors. So.
Excellent. Well, guys, I've got one final question. I think it's actually a good question to sort of put a bow on the webinar. This question, I'll ask each of you to respond and maybe take 30 seconds each in the interest of time. And it's a good question. You guys have all 3 built some of the most admired remodeling businesses in the country. Where are you heading in the future from here? What's next on your journey? And I'll start off with Bob.
Well, for us, it's been a rebuilding process. I mean, in 2007, we were a $7 million company, and Charleston got hit pretty hard with the recession, and we ended up at $2.5 million. So we had to completely restructure our company at $2.5 million because it was a much smaller job size. And so now we're on the rebuild, and we're growing again, and so our job sizes are growing again. And so our vision moving forward is that we want to capitalize on those bigger jobs coming in, but we don't want to give up on some of those mid-sized and smaller jobs that have carried us. So we actually see the company having not divisions, if you will, but a different way to handle a small project versus how we handle a large design build.
Okay, great. Jonas, how about you?
A few years back, or actually almost 10 years ago, I started a second business that was, we sort of searched for core competence, and it was in kitchens, and it's a kitchen design and retail kitchen business, and we do now projects all over the country, and it has its own brand identity, and I like that diversified stream. And my next business that I've been working on sort of in the background, but really excited about putting on is I have a lot of interest in music and designing music studios for musicians around the country with this product. And so my heart's sort of in that and diversifying as opposed to growing bigger.
All right, great. That sounds exciting. Todd, how about you?
We've been, we were just like everybody else. We went from about 6.8 down to about a little bit under 5 million. And we have our mission the last several years is really to systemize, and we've actually created some software that allows us to track every piece and part of the overall project and the status and the process and our communication with our clients. And it's allowed us to grow today where we should be this year about 9.5 million to 10 million. And my goal is to grow by profits. Now we've just kind of systemized that to grow by more profit, not necessarily by additional projects, but allowing us to increase, just bump that margin up 4 or 5%. And I want to be the, most streamlined $10 million efficient company that, brings, good quality work to our clients, makes sure it changes our clients' lives, and changes the people who work here. So.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you for sharing all those thoughts. Victoria, I'm going to turn it back to you for kind of the call to action for Remodeler's Advantage.
All right, thank you so much. Well, again, thank you, Guild Quality, for allowing me to be part of this. If I'm assuming pretty much everybody on the line is a part of this awesome company. If you're not, you should be. I think that about, 75–80% of our members are part of Guild Quality as well, and we love the partnership. Now, Remodeler's Advantage is all about helping remodeling company owners fulfill their personal and business dreams. And the folks that are on the panel today have been members with us for a long time. So if you want to hang with the Eagles, hang with smart people like this, talk to us about joining our community. To give you a little taste, we have a special offer for you. If you go to www.remodelersAdvantage.com/webinar special offer, we're giving you 3 different documents, or 3 different resources, I should say, that can help you as you're moving forward, maybe answer some questions for you. The first is the Remodeler's Guide to Making More and Working Less. I think a dream for all of us. It's a 10-step email series that you can sign up for on our at the special URL. And it covers a lot of the best practices that we know that the best companies use. The second is a knowledge assessment, where you can go through a number of departments within your business, look at best practices, check whether or not you're using it, and then in the end you'll compare how you did to, again, the best in the business, which are the members of our community. And last is the Profit First Calculator, which is a little app, and it's a blast. I was working with this guy today, and we pulled it up, and we were saying, okay, look at, right now you're hitting 25% gross profit, way too low. Let's bump that up. Let's get that gross profit up to 30%. Look at how much less revenue you have to produce. It was so exciting to him to see exactly the little tweaks he could make to turn his company around. So some great tools for you. Hopefully it'll give you a taste of Remodeler's Advantage, and then I invite you to join our community. Thank you very much for having me.
Outstanding. Thanks, Victoria. And for Guild Quality, as always, if you flip to the next slide, most of the companies that are on this call are currently members of Guild Quality, but some of you are checking us out. For those that are not members, I definitely encourage you to take advantage of our free trial. We give you the ability to survey 20 past clients. I think you'll learn something through that process. We'll present the results to you in your Guild Quality account. It really brings it to life. Both the operational benefits of our service as well as the marketing benefits as well. So check that out at guildquality.com. And, we've talked a lot about mission and values on this call. I want to share our mission, which is to elevate the stature of the building profession to a level commensurate with its importance. That means we want to help great companies really continue to improve and also press their advantage in the marketplace. If you're doing a great job, why not show everyone sort of the demonstrable results that we can share? So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Erica on our team is going to be pushing out a white paper in the next week summarizing this call, and we'll also be sending out a link to the recorded event sometime tomorrow. Thank you, Victoria, so much for moderating the panel and speaking today. Great job. And thank you also to our 3 terrific panelists. This has been incredibly educational, and we're grateful for your time. So thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon.